So, I think usually I start this session with what I call free fall writing, and everybody, so you bring, as facilitator, you bring with you paper and a pen for each one, and so, or you make sure they bring it beforehand, no? And I will start a sentence, and free fall writing just says, without thinking, just start, like you start with the words that I give, and you just see what comes up, and just keep writing. Kind of don't put the pen down. Go where it feels like rich and juicy. Yeah, try not to avoid certain things. Just allow to flow. Don't judge. Don't correct. Don't try to make too much sense. It's just like, boom. And the sentence is, if I think about the world today, I boom, 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 boom. Yeah? So that's a starting sentence. If I think about the world today, I, and then free fall writing. Yeah? And that maybe for 5 minutes is enough. And then in pairs, after that, go into pairs of 2. Well, pair is always good. Go into pairs and just go for a little walk, maybe find a spot, sit down, and just share what came up for you. You can either just speak about what came up for you, or you might want to read out to the other one what came up for you. Again, the other one is just listening deeply, and you can ask a question to clarify something or so as you're listening, but it's just like, okay. And then the other one shares, and then we come back together. Okay. Then the next step is, so here's so this little exercise that we'll do now, I'll ask you, I want to know from you, just kind of throw kind of bullet points at me of the big challenges of our time. What would you like to see change in the world? What issues? So we're looking at kind of big issues.
I can understand the first.
¿Qué cosas que quieres que cambian en el mundo? ¿Qué son los desafíos, challenges, desafíos de nuestro tiempo?
The violence.
Violence? Yeah.
The attention always is outside.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Like outside of yourself? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it goes a little with violence, but it's the willing of domination on the other.
Domination?
Yeah.
Like
Control.
power.
Yes.
Yeah.
Domination.
I don't know.
In which context?
In relation with people, I don't know, adult and child, men and women, minority and
Yeah.
politics and people.
Desire to dominate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
others. Or man and nature. Too.
Yeah, man, nature, men, women.
Yeah.
Adaptation.
One politician over the other.
Yeah.
Competition of
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah. Brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters and
Yeah.
so kind.
What else? What challenges? What are the politicians speaking about in the world? What are we struggling with?
Solidarity. Like
Yeah. Solidarity. So, for example, in the whole Corona thing, that was a big issue. No, some people feeling really like, okay, we can, in order for the greater good of everyone or the well-being of old people, we will be solidary. We practice solidarity, and we just stay at home for a while or whatever.
Yeah.
That's solidarity. And the contrary of solidarity would be egoism or something, maybe. Like egotism, selfishness, no? Maybe?
Yeah.
Short-sighted selfishness. Of course, there's a wise selfishness also. But there's a short-sighted kind of self-centeredness.
Like
that is probably the contrary, or one contrary aspect of solidarity. Like often people say, for example, a challenge of our time is greediness.
What is greed?
Greed is
Avaricia.
Ah.
I want more.
Yeah. Sí, avaricia. Sí. I think another problem is the lack of personal responsibility.
Can you say something about that?
Mm,
¿Puedo preguntar algo? ¿Ustedes salen ahora a la 1 o algo así? Me
Sí.
había dicho Ana. Que bajo con ustedes.
Ah, sí.
Sí.
¿Te va? Yeah.
Sí.
Oh.
Vuelvo el otro fin de.
Okay.
Ya tengo todo por aquí. Estoy pendiente cuando vayan a salir.
Then there are other things that come up. No, I asked you what you.
yeah. It's like ¿puedo decirlo en castellano? Como hacerse cargo, ¿no? de lo que me pasa a mí,
Okay.
en lugar de irme a culpar al otro.
Okay. Yeah. So to take responsibility for how you feel, for example, how you think,
Or how you
rather
do
than
in the world.
projecting it
Yeah.
onto the world and taking a victim position.
Yeah, but as well,
As
what
well as with
what
things.
I'm doing.
Yeah, with actions
yeah.
like destroying
Yeah.
the earth or something like that.
Yeah.
Consuming, going, like being, for example, against whatever climate change, but if it comes to your holiday in Martinique,
Yeah.
you're the first one to go. You know, like you want to go to the Caribbean,
Yeah.
lie on a sandy beach, and it's cheap in Bali. Let's go. You know, it's so cheap, man. It's like these kinds of contradictions that we live with. No, they are part, and they are because we're always, on one hand, individual, but we're also part of a collective culture and a collective consciousness. So those two are as well, and there's always like a dance between these polarities of expression, and like you can never be separate and apart from everything.
Yeah.
It's just not possible because you are part of everything at
Yeah.
the same time.
And that point, I think another challenge is the exclusion
Exclusion
of what is.
okay.
For example, we have sometimes sadness.
Yeah.
If we don't allow us to feel it and embrace it, it's impossible to transform. So all of kind of exclusion. Yeah.
Great. Then I'll put two more things. One I would see as a challenge of our time is biodiversity loss. So on a mass scale, like people speak of the sixth mass extinction event, only that this time it's not because of a big comet or a super volcano explosion. It's of human action that species are dying out and going extinct on a massive scale very, very quickly because of industrial human activities and ignorance and so on. So I put that mass extinction. Diversity. I would also like to put disrespect towards other life forms, like forests, animals, insects. So I would say a root there would be kind of anthropocentrism, to believe that humans are more valuable and have a greater right than other beings, no?
Equality across all species.
Equality.
Or
Inequality.
is the challenge, yeah. Speciesism.
Speciesism.
That's what it's called.
Inequality, not only between people, poor and rich, there will be another one. Poor and rich is a challenge of our time, no? Inequality. But also, I have a voice, I'm a human, I don't have a voice because I don't speak human language. And so, therefore, if I'm a pig, I can't write you a bill or I can't defend my rights because I can't communicate with you and you're not wise enough to recognize my needs and my wish to be happy and well. No, I don't just want to be eaten by you or something like that. So, and another big topic at the moment in elections, for example, is climate change, and it's a big challenge also, pressing challenge in many areas of the world. Again, in the rich West, Central Europe, for example, we feel the least about climate change. And the contrary, we're like, oh yeah, it'd be nice to have some palm trees here, But it's a huge challenge already, and there are forest fires, and there's droughts, and there's floods, and things like that. So climate change. Okay, now.
And why not exclusion?
Huh?
Exclusion.
Exclusion. Now, next step is, if you see a connection between one thing and the other one, one issue and the other issue, and another issue, a relationship, let me know.
There's
Just
All
say.
of them.
all of them.
Yes.
But first say 1, 2, and then where do you see a connection?
For me, violence is connected to each one of them. Violence, exclusion.
Yeah, domination as well is a kind of violence.
It's definitely violence.
Inequality as well.
What is greed again?
Greed is selfishness.
Ah,
It's like
avaricia.
really
Wanting.
I
Quiero
want more,
eso,
more,
quiero,
more,
quiero,
more,
quiero,
more,
quiero.
more. Me.
Yeah. Ah, yeah,
Más,
yeah.
más, más.
So you're selfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lack of.
Yeah. Lack of solidarity. Not the problem. Climate change and mass.
Now we have one block up here and one block down there.
Attention is outside, and the grid are like because when you really, when you see things from outside.
Why?
Because when all your attention is outside, it's like I want this, 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 and because
Yeah.
you're not inside.
And as well, is connected with the lack of personal responsibility. I think attention is outside.
Yeah.
So everything is connected.
So we could keep going on and finding connections there between things, but of course everything in a way is connected, and these issues aren't standing alone issues. And it's a good, I think it's a good recognition that on one hand, of course, everything is related with everything else, and you're not powerless because of that also. So it makes a difference, even though you can't see maybe the difference that you as an educator make in school or something, or as a mother make, or as a worker in a supermarket at the cash machine makes, but it is also like a smile is powerful, can water something beautiful and have a knock-on effect with something else and something else. So we shouldn't on one hand look to see the impact that we have in the world, okay? Some people might see that very clearly, and they become super famous and they put out one nice song and billions of people listen to it and there's some seeds of wisdom in it or something. But we shouldn't expect to see that. It's like my mom once said, perhaps if Adolf Hitler would have spent a couple of weeks with me in nature on a program, maybe so much suffering could have been saved. But you would never know about it, because you don't see it then. It didn't happen,
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, yeah, fair enough. Because I was saying, well, what I do doesn't really make a difference, doesn't make a difference in the world. It's like we are doomed. Doom and gloom attitude, and you can sometimes if you look at too much media also, because media feeds on that, because humans kind of so much feed on strong emotions and these kind of ideas, and then if you too much buy into that and you take it more deeply in than kind of entertainment, you feel it's all like that, but it's not all like that, because you see so much beauty everywhere all the time if you have the eyes for it as well. So these are just a couple of things to take away. So this is an exercise to visualize ecology, the interrelated study in nature of all things and all phenomena. Now, where we go from this then, and here now in the program, maybe now after that exercise, or these two exercises, you would now maybe go for a lunch break at the river, give it a bit of a rest, go for a climb or so. See, like you plan out your day beforehand, and then you can come back to it, and now you say, okay, you pull out the sheet of paper again, and you say, okay, so when we look at all of these different challenges, I would like you to go into groups of 3 or 4 people, okay? And please take here, boom, 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 pieces of paper with you and pens. So you need to bring these with you, pens and paper. And I want you to come up with a model or a theory that tries to identify in that theory the root cause for all of these challenges, okay? Because if we can find a common root or common roots, then that's a good place to start to look at how we can tackle it. Because rather than kind of trying to save the whale and trying to save the panda bear, which is all nice things to do, and try to work for women's rights and try to kind of bring food to the poor people and so on, which are great things and important things to do, we can also try to understand and see what is, or is there a root cause? Is there a common root, and then we can tackle that one. Yeah.
Root
Root is rai.
Yeah. Like the seeds, maybe.
No.
No.
No, root. Root
Yeah,
is rai.
I know what the root is.
The
But
seed comes before the root.
so in the model of Thich Nhat Hanh,
Yeah.
it can be like a seed, the root.
Well, I
No?
forget about
Okay,
the model of
okay.
Thich Nhat Hanh now. Maybe that comes to you when you try to identify the root cause, but because we did the model before, it's so present now, no? But, so I'm interested in identifying and coming up with a model that explains, okay, how are these challenges kind of related, and can we identify what, like a common source? Be another way, okay? So we're not gonna do that now because you have to
Yeah.
go to
Get
the bus.
prepared.
But it's a very nice exercise, and you will feel like probably 15 minutes is fine to give people 15 minutes of time. In general, when you work with groups of 10, you have to have quite a sharp attention on your clock. And then people come back and people present
The roots.
what they came up with, the model,
Yeah.
the theory they came up with, okay? And they can do that with the whiteboard or with a flip chart, okay? And like that, it's also a practice to share, and it's also good fun, no? Like people can make a bit of a show out of what they've, like make it kind of engaging, the presentation, rather than like just boring. And then after that, what's the time?
1:45.
1:45. At 1 we have to leave. So we have 10 minutes, I would say, to finish this off. After people shared their ideas, very often themes come up like money, selfishness, greediness, being at the root of climate change, inequality, violence, and so on. Yeah. So often money comes up somewhere for some, not everyone. Selfishness. We humans are the cause of all these things. That comes up as well. Ego comes up. So, and then, but it's usually quite. Oh no, we can do it here. It's usually quite nice to see that the students just sitting together and working on it, like with their focused attention, that they come up with really very interesting and valid models, and they enjoy it also, most of them, no? Again, it's about the setting, and that they're like, for these things that take a lot of power of mind, if you are really tired now after a long day's activity, maybe it's not the right moment to do that. So you might want to do this in the morning when people are fresh, no? For example. So you, as planning your day, you find your way with it. I want to introduce a model of Otto Scharmer, who is a social theorist, very well known, contemporary social theorist, who also looked at this issue of the challenges of our time, and he tries to also identify a common root cause, because he says if we are able to look at it systemically, then we can kind of understand it, and rather than tackling issue by issue, throw a net over the whole thing and go straight to the root. So, and then he's looking at it and he comes up with this model that he calls the Iceberg Model. Iceberg.
Iceberg.
Okay.
Titanic.
Yeah.
And he identifies three kinds of disconnects. So that's the ocean. Actually, I'm not quite sure why it's drawn like that. Otto Scharmer, okay? Otto Scharmer. Otto Scharmer. He's an Austrian guy who works for the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. MIT. And this model is called the Iceberg. And he identifies three disconnects, okay? One he calls the social disconnect. Social disconnect. And that is the disconnection between self and other. Okay? So he identifies a disconnection there. Self and other. Self is not the same as other. I am not the same as you. Then he identifies what he calls the ecological disconnect. Ecological disconnect, which is self and nature. Okay? I'm
Not
this,
part
but
of it.
I'm not nature. No, that kind of subconscious disconnect that happens a lot. Self is not the same as nature.
Schizophrenia.
And then the last disconnect, he calls it the spiritual disconnect. Spiritual disconnect. And by that he says the self is not the same as the self. So, and he writes it self with small s, self is not the same as self. So the personal self, you could say, the egoic self is not the same as the universal self, the real self, the self of being, the self of consciousness. And when you look at, or when I look at that, I see, well, in all of these three is the self, okay? In these three disconnects, trying to identify the root cause, the same thing that we just did before in our exercise, is he comes up with this self, okay? So for me, it's beautiful to then ask, okay, well, what is the self then? So here, the root cause is identified as it's an issue about identity and understanding, really understanding and looking who we are, actually. Have we made an error collectively in how we perceive what we are? And maybe we, being consciousness, have made that error a long time ago. No? And now, in order to deal with all of these things, it's about investigating, looking at and into, using our ability of discernment, of understanding, to understand what we are. And also to understand what we are beyond the personal psychological self, in order to see and discover what else is there. So the guided meditation that we did in the morning is really introducing that other aspect of the self, which is the self of being, the self of presence, of consciousness. And it's also with the model of consciousness with Thich Nhat Hanh, working and understanding the seeds of consciousness in consciousness, but also understanding the one, learning to pay attention to the one who perceives all these seeds. Is that one personal or impersonal? And if it is personal, what perceives that? Is that what perceives personal ultimately? What is the nature of that one? So that such a question then invites introspection and just a looking. What is here? What is seeing? And the guided meditations, for example, that we do with the students can help to look and to introspect and to look like that, because it's very difficult initially to even kind of sit with such a question, because we are not used to looking inside and to looking, or to just being, to just paying attention to that simplicity of being. It's like too simple for the mind. You cannot attack it with your mind. You can't. Consciousness and the mind, they're like related. There's no mind without the perceiving of it, but essentially, or at least the kind of thinking mind, personal mind, psychological mind, is not the same as the essential nature of what we are, of being. And yeah, Otto Schama says that we have a blind spot collectively, and that blind spot, he says, is consciousness. It's consciousness, so blind spot. And another word for consciousness would be beingness, or conscious presence, or awareness. And so education for social change, for positive social transformation, education for harmony, well-being, happiness, peace, sustainability is very much at the root related to that kind of understanding and investigation. And it sounds like big words and big concepts, but the truth of it is very, very simple and very basic. It's very essential. It's only because we've not learned to pay attention to ourselves.
Buen día, buen día.
Buen día,
Hola, ¿qué
qué
tal?
sorpresa.
Hola.
Buen día.
¿Cómo andan? No quiero interrumpir.
Okay.
Continúen, por favor.
Yeah, casi. Okay, so perfect. We did the last session as well. I'm very happy, and I hope we even filmed it. So
No.
people can look in. Yeah. Thank you.